Erik Brown. Thanks for coming down. I just want to start by saying thanks to DeeperBlue and for Raid for bringing me down. I think everyone knows the story of the Thai cave rescue. It's pretty much been everywhere for the last couple months. My goal is to try to give you a little bit of a personal background of some insights up there, and hopefully give you a few bits and pieces of stuff that maybe wasn't in the news that we didn't know. So if you have any questions, feel free to yell them out to me. If not, we'll do a big question and answer stuff at the end for anything that I don't cover. A little bit of background on myself. I'm a tech instructor trainer with Raid, Open Circuit, and CCR. Most of my experience was sort of the deeper dive sites off Egypt, deeper wrecks, all that kind of fun stuff there. My cave experience is something I've kept just for fun. I'm not a cave instructor. It's sort of the one facet of diving that I've left for me to strictly enjoy that way. But every single time I do come back through Canada, I always make sure I pop into Mexico and have a little bit of fun down there. So with all due, all right, I'm going to introduce the most famous soccer team in the world right now. All right, the Wild Boars. A lot of the questions I get is how they sort of got stuck in there in the first place. When the initial thing was going on, I got a lot of messages and a lot of flack in the media, directed towards the coach. And as this presentation goes on, as people learn more about it, you're going to find out he's actually the main hero in this situation for sure. All right, so what happened is it was actually 3 weeks before the actual cave entrance was supposed to be blocked off for any type of rain, monsoon, preventing any type of situation happening. So there's really no fault on the coach's part, to be fair, at all. He's actually taking these 13 kids, he's trying to do team building workshops, he's trying to keep them out of trouble. They've been in this cave many times before, so there's definitely no fault on anyone's part. Just Mother Nature just didn't really seem to agree with them on this second. If you look at where we are in Thailand, it's a very remote place in the northern border of Thailand. So, I mean, this is going to become a factor later on because I have to with the international efforts of trying to get everyone there. You can see actually how remote it is on the top part there. For us living in Thailand, we have to leave the country every 3 months. So we were actually joking that when we were actually diving through the cave, we actually went into Burma and back. So we tried to get them to stamp us back in. That didn't really go so well, but that's the way it works. The cave itself it's gorgeous. I mean, I have a little bit of a skewed view of it now because all I saw was pumper trucks and hoses and everything else, but I am definitely looking forward to going back and actually seeing it in sort of its natural state. I hear they're actually making a museum out of it. When this is all said and done, they'll actually have little scales in there. Still have my dive gear in there. I'll hopefully get back sooner or later. The cave is quite unique. We had the benefit of having some on-site experts. All right, so this is Mr. Vern Unsworth. All right, so he's going to become famous later on for his little Twitter spat with Elon Musk. We'll leave that one for later. Vern's a British national, lived there for 20 years, and he's actually done a whole dry map of this cave, all 6 kilometers all the way to the back. He actually has a book on every single dry cave in Thailand. All right, so when the situation arose and they realized that the kids were trapped and how it was going to be, he was actually the first person to get brought in. All right, so I think he's definitely the one who got the international effort started, and he's the first person I think who realized the scope of what was happening because he's obviously been in there all the way to the back. So being a British national and especially a big part of the cave community, as soon as he realized sort of the scope of what was going to happen, he instantly, went up to the British military and says, you need to call 2 guys and you need to fly them over now. Those 2 guys, Rick and John, on the right there, all right? Some of the stuff that you're going to hear in the next hour is sort of truly amazing from them. So the British cave rescue guys flew over instantly from Ern. And then we also have some Thai cave divers on the left there, Ben and Max. So these were the initial 4 people that were actually doing the search. When I sort of look at, the complexity of the operation and how things went, it's sort of the efforts of the initial search pattern that really, I can't really comprehend. I mean, I wasn't there at this point in time. When I actually saw the difficulties that I had trying to navigate myself through the cave, and I try to go back and take a step thinking, these guys actually trying to put that line in, fighting some of the most hardcore conditions that I've seen. That's when I take a step back and was really sort of truly amazed at what they're doing. I think anyone, when you sort of go into a virgin cave, I'm not sure how many cave divers are here, but you can sort of imagine, you can see everything's beautiful and tropical, and you have this nice smooth cave reel that you sort of weave your way through. I mean, for these guys, not only are they battling zero visibility and currents, I've tried getting the video footage, but I think it's blocked off the documentary they're filming, but it wasn't a little bit of flow, it was a river. And they were that's the one footage I really wish I had, is the actual conditions that they had in the first 5-6 days. All right, so not only do you have the massive complexities of the diving conditions, but now they're also having to dive in big, thick nylon rope. We weren't using small, neat cave rope, all right, because we had to pull ourselves through the nail. So not only are they trying to feel their way through and navigate, but they're also holding big bundles of rope that are just creating an entanglement hazard, and they're getting stuck. And they had to move fairly slowly. I mean, what took them 9 days to set up, we would actually swim in 4 hours in the end. All right, so when I sit there and look at the sort of complexities, it really is their initial search part of getting that cave set up the way they did that I find truly remarkable, to be fair. Our involvement, I belong to a little cave rescue team, hotel rescue team. Unfortunately, when you combine water and rescue, it's usually recovery. There's been a few times in the past Thailand's asked for us to help in some sucking boats and recoveries there. But it wasn't until 4 days into the search that we actually found out about the kids. So I was sitting there, just got back from a trip, having a beer, and then I got a message from Ben Remnitz, who was again one of the team members up there on the left. So I instantly get online, Google it, and start realizing some of the situations that happened up there. So I sent Ben a message, and I was just like, "Do you need an extra set of hands?" He was obviously quite busy at the time, but the next day he's like, "We need as many hands as we can get up here right now. It's pretty tough." And that's when I grabbed 2 guys from the island, also cave divers, and then we were on the next flight up there. So the first day that our team got there was quite stressful, because you're talking to some of the best divers in the world, and they're telling you the complexities that they're dealing with, and it's some of the harder dives that they've had to do. So it was definitely getting on the plane and flying up there was more than intimidating, for sure. But it's definitely created a very much of a roller coaster, because the day that we got up there, we're sitting at the guest house, we're kind of relaxing, Ben showing us some of the footage of the thing, he's got the maps up, he's going through it. I think he was actually giving an interview at the time, and everyone's phone started pinging off, and there actually was the news that I actually found the kids. So we didn't think it was real, so we go online, and there's actually a video that surfaced almost instantly. So I was only there 6 hours, and then now we went from a search. Now it was actually, now we have recovery. So I think it was really tough, because you're not really sure what you get yourself into, and I think everyone's seen this famous video now.
How many of you? 13. Brilliant. Yeah.
Backpack is we going to die?
No, not today. Oh, not today. There's 2 of us. You have to die. We are coming. It's okay. It's okay. Many people are coming. Many people. We are the first. Many people come.
So, we saw that video on Facebook before we actually got a call from any of the military that are there. So, I think when you're looking at this, is obviously 9 days in. I think when you start looking at the facts of the kids without water, without food, not even knowing really if they're alive or not at that point in time, I don't, you know, the one part that I don't think people really understand is how close this operation didn't even come to, you know, being finished. I think, you know, we're fighting some pretty hard conditions at those point when the kids are found. You're looking at 9 days now with the potential of the kids being alive being very slim. You know, I'm not sure if it's, you know, I think that was probably the last day they were going to look. I can't be for sure, I wasn't the one doing it, but I think that was the last day they're going to look. And if those kids were another 10 meters in the cave, they wouldn't have been found on that day. So as I said, the guys, obviously the complexity of putting the line in and going through the big thick cave line, that cave line was going to, the rope that they took in was going to end 10 more meters down the line. So, you know, if those kids are 10 meters farther in, there's probably a pretty good chance that they weren't coming out, because they would have had to turn around and come back, they wouldn't have been found. And like I said, I think, you know, as far as I understand, that was going to be the last day that they were sending teams in to search for them. So, I mean, there's so much things in this story that come down to timing, and that's one where we sort of lucked out there, for sure. When I was talking to Rick after, it was quite interesting. Obviously, you're in this sort of, you know, dark and it's cold, all your senses are going down. And I was amazed that he said that he actually smelled the kids before he saw them. When you start putting in 4 kilometers. 4 kilometers. Yeah, I mean, the kids are, yeah, 4 kilometers. The cave itself is 6 kilometers long, but about 4 kilometers. Yeah, I mean, you can think of, you know, 13 people trapped in a small area. You think of the hygiene issues, and I just kind of found that amazing that, you know, Rick, when he popped up on one of the first dumps, he actually smelled them before he saw them. Like, oh man. Yeah, so I mean, that was obviously, you know, it was a big day. I mean, I was just getting there, but you can see the roller coaster of. Everyone was pretty happy, and you can imagine the sort of world efforts, the media, you know, the military, everyone there. It was quite an electric, you know, buzz that night, and you know, the next thing in the morning, that buzz I think faded fairly quickly. You know, I think everyone was pretty happy that the kids were found, but it didn't take more than, say, a couple hours for them to realize that now they had a bigger problem of how they get the kids out, and not only that, but you have to get the kids out with the world watching. So, I mean, it was, you know, you could definitely see a roller coaster in that day when they started trying to put the ideas down, and we're writing down certain things, and you're looking at all the sort of ideas that we have, and there was no zero risk option for us. You know, we were talking about keeping the kids in, swimming them out, going back and forth, and you know, as we sort of went through all the positives and negatives of each one, it just looked a little bit more grim every single conversation that we had, to be fair. But the one thing is, you know, that the Thai military, the Thai community did an amazing job of always sort of powering through. I've never seen an operation this size. You know, in the end, we found out there's actually 9,000 people involved in this operation. 2,000 military, 1,000 police. We had 50 U.S. Marines fly in. We had 20 Australian police. You think of all the people that were cooking and cleaning and doing everything else. They just had a banquet not too recently in Bangkok, and 9,000 volunteers that were estimated to be involved. So when you show up to the cave site, it's just people everywhere. You know, they're trying to exhaust every single option. There's teams that are, you know, walking the mountains, trying to find different routes. We have obviously the pumper trucks, which is a big thing here. Because after the kids got found, we've had some serious weather issues. You know, I was very impressed as the problem solving continued. No one sort of made any rash decisions or jumped into anything. They really sat back and tried to exhaust every option, think of every single plan they could. They're still sending in, people climbing all over the mountains trying to find new exits. We have drill teams coming in. And then obviously the biggest mission at that point in time was to try to lower the water level as much as we could and bringing in pumper trucks from all over Southeast Asia. So the issue, you know, a lot of people say, why couldn't you dig down? I mean, where the kids sat in the cave with the trajectory of the cave, it was going to be about 1 kilometer of drilling. and there's some level of gypsum in the middle, which made it almost impossible for them to go through. They still tried their best, but digging or creating a tunnel for like the Chilean miner situation, that slowly figured out that that was definitely not going to be an option. I don't think I've ever seen so much water get pumped out of a place in my entire life. Last I heard, there said there was 1 billion liters of water got pumped out of the cave, to the point where it actually flooded most of downtown Chiang Rai. So all the nearby rice fields, everything else was completely ruined because they're pumping out so much water. 600 scuba tanks got flown in. All right, we had 3 full-time compressors running back to back. So you just see, you know, everyone had their own little job to do, and this thing was running 24 hours a day. So it was, you know, it was quite intense to sit there and watch. And it was quite intimidating, actually, to sort of watch all this kind of stuff going on around. Again, we were quite lucky. Our support team, it was very military run. It was very compartmentalized. Everything was very segmented. With that many people, you can't be in every meeting. You can't go to everything. And obviously, the easiest way was, you know, the military run. We were lucky enough to fall under the U.S. Marines. Became pretty good friends with some of those guys. They're pretty good guys to have on your side. You know, they're obviously really supportive of us. They were checking us in and out. Every time we had to walk into the cave entrance, these guys were carrying our tanks and carrying all our stuff for us. So that was, you know, pretty impressive to have a chance to work alongside them. We had a team of Chinese engineers fly in. But the entrance to the cave is, like you're saying, it's a good 1 kilometer just walking in. You know, when the UK guys and Ben and them were fighting it, they had to swim in. By this point in time, with the pumper trucks going down, we actually lowered the water level enough we could now walk into Sump 3. That was about a good hour walk, and the last 200-300 meters was probably about a 45-degree slope of mud and crevices. It was pretty grueling. We had 1 broken leg, 2 broken arms, and this is just on the hike in. You know, again, we were pretty lucky. Again, you see all these 450 scuba tanks that needed to be, you know, put inside the cave at some point. By the time we got there, the Chinese engineers had actually got a rock climbing team, climbed up, bolted stuff into the roof, and actually made a pulley system for this last portion. So when we're climbing up this sort of mountain, there were scuba tanks flying over your head, up, flying back. It was a full-on operation in there. It was pretty impressive. So again, no one went in for the first 3 days after the kids were found. You know, we were dealing with some pretty shitty weather, to be fair, and just based on the fact of how fast that cave floods, they deemed it was just too dangerous for anyone to go in. The only people who entered the cave after the kids were found were 4 Thai Navy SEALs. And now that the line had been put all the way into the end, 4 Thai Navy SEALs actually swam all the way to the back and spent the remainder of the time with the kids. They play obviously a key role in the end, but had the privilege of meeting them after, and you have to think about the sort of mindset of you know, what they were doing when they went in, because at this point in time, swimming the kids out was not an option. I think anyone who can, you know, appreciate the gravity of not only cave diving, but, you know, putting, you know, 13-year-old kids who can't swim into this situation, swimming out wasn't an option. At this point in time, the plan was to actually leave the kids in there for 4 months. So when these 4 Navy SEALs swam back with food and provisions, you know, in the back of their mind, which still blows me away, there was a very good chance that these 4 Navy SEALs were going to spend 4 months in the kids. And that, to me, when you sort of meet these guys and, you know, you talk about some of the heroes of the situation, you know, going back there, not knowing if you're going to come back out, to me was, you know, that was a pretty remarkable task for these guys to get in. Leaving the kids in the cave for 4 months, that also slowly became not an option. When we did go back, we were taking gas ionizers in, and when we started getting towards the end of it, the kids were down to about 16% oxygen in the last chamber when they last went in. So the kids had about maybe 2 or 3 days before they started going hypoxic. In true Thai sort of culture, they were trying to exhaust every single option. It's one of those scenes from a movie I'll never forget. Coming back out one of the days, and there must have been 1,000 volunteers in that first kilometer of the cave, standing 1 meter side by side, and just sort of grunting, keeping rhythm, and passing. They're trying to weave in a 4 kilometer long low pressure hose, and they're going to try to pump in oxygen to the kids. I think you can see the logistical part of that not working, but it didn't really matter. They're going to still keep trying everything that they possibly could. Just so you have a rough idea of sort of distance, this slide comes back up again when we start talking about the procedures and how the actual operation of bringing the kids out went. But you can see that sort of first part from the walkway to Chamber 3. Chamber 3 was where the Thai military, the US military, had set up more of a makeshift command center. So this is where all the tanks would be stored. There was a little makeshift hospital that they'd put in there. And this is where sort of we'd start doing our walk. Past Chamber 3, so this is where there was 13 of us who were allowed to dive past there. At this point in time, the US military had said it was too dangerous for their Navy SEALs, along with the Australians, so it needed to be on a volunteer basis only. You couldn't be on military, you couldn't be working. So this is where, that Chamber 3 point is where the 13 of us would only be allowed to post there. It was quite difficult because obviously you're sitting there and you want to help, but you're not really sure what the plan is for 3 days. And then it varied as much, all right, you guys put your gear on, you're going in. We still didn't know what the plan was going to be, but they did know that they needed to start prepping for whatever plan they were going to have. So of course, putting the line in the conditions they were doing was a little bit inefficient. There's tons of line traps that people were getting stuck in everywhere. There was some hoses that were put in there. So the general idea is that sort of the support rescue guys, which I guess is my team of 4, would go in and do our best to sort of clean the cave up as much as we possibly could. So we'd go in there, see if we could make the line a little bit more efficient, retie a few things, take the lines that were sort of separated, put them together, all at the same time while staging tanks throughout the cave and making sure that we were prepped for any potential mission that they were going to have in the future. So it was the first 3 days you're walking in, and then you're sitting in sort of this little mud pit, watching the lines sort of disappear. And this is where you're sort of sitting there going, I don't know how I got myself involved in this, but here we go. We didn't really have time to sort of get bearings with the cave or sort of go around. Obviously we had a certain amount of days and we had to be inefficient. Each day that we'd go in was about between 8 and 12 hours, depending on what our mission was for that day. So the first day it was quite tough. Again, I didn't realize the parallels between cave diving and sump diving. And sump diving for me is not something that I had any experience in at the time. Usually when I go underwater, I stay underwater. I don't have to get out and climb over a bunch of mud and crawl through all this stuff. So this was a little bit out of my skill set and a little bit out of my comfort zone, I'd say, getting into that initial part. Towards the end, you get a little bit more comfortable with it, and I felt it right. But that first day of diving was, it was it's a tough one for me. We not only had, most of us were in sort of a basic side mount configuration. We had 2 guys on CCRs, but again, because we were staged in the caves, not only did we have the equipment that we needed, but we'd have 4 tanks bundled together. You can see in that photo, we'd actually have to strap those between our legs. We'd pull those through the cave system and leave those at certain parts. Again, so that's not making life any easier, hauling 4 tanks between your legs through the cave. Again, we had a little bit of a benefit because, again, we weren't using standard cave line. We're using big, thick nylon rope, and literally our job was to kind of pull ourselves through. Couldn't see a thing, bash your head on rocks here, snap there. Tanks would get entangled on every single line that was there. But again, because it was a thicker line, we had a benefit of making it a little bit easier for us to untangle ourselves if you can. Our team was a team of 4, so we split up into a team of 2, and then we gave ourselves about 10 minutes spacing to make sure we didn't have any sort of bottlenecks as we were going through. I sort of remember following, my buddy through and, navigating our way through, and it was kind of one of those situations where your heart stops because, I ran into the team in front of me, and the guy wasn't moving. So you sort of, grab his leg and give it a squeeze, and he's not moving or coming back, and of course your heart's kind of thinking the worst. It took him maybe, a few seconds to sort of reach around and give me a squeeze and let me know it was all right. But at that point in time, he's stuck. So he's stuck in front of me, and now my buddy's stuck behind me. So I'm pinned between two people who are stuck, and we couldn't move for about, it was a good solid 5 minutes until we managed to weasel his way through it and get out. I know 5 minutes doesn't really seem like a long time, but 5 minutes when you can't see your hand in front of your face and you're stuck in a cave, it was felt like eternity. We definitely popped out the other side into sump 4, and yeah, we took a little bit of a breather. Yeah, so I mean, I think most of the situations like this, you would just cancel the dive. Obviously, we didn't have that situation of stopping, turning around, going back. You know, and for 3 days, our job was to go in there and station them out. So I think our team of 4, we did 4 missions in, and I think we put in 68 tanks strategically placed throughout the cave, making sure that we were sort of getting ready for how it comes back. I think, you know, as the camaraderie in the dive industry is quite impressive, and you can only imagine, you know, how much it was in a small sort of chamber like this. When you got to chamber 3, you know, a lot of the Thai Navy SEALs, they spent 10 days sleeping in there. So, you know, there's obviously had a little bit of language barrier, but, you know, they were always there helping us, and we'd pop over the water in sump 3. They're always there to help carry your tanks and get ready to go. It was on the 2nd day of us going through, we came out of sump 3, and we had, you know, 3 Thai guys ready to go, had tanks on, ready to go. So you give them sort of you give them a high five and, you know, say Godspeed, and then they went. It was the next morning and we got the news that one of them didn't make it back. So that was, you know, it was obviously devastating for our team. You know, you just sat there and shook a guy's hand and went in. And, you know, Simon's, you know, again, another true hero in this one. He's, you know, he's retired military. He's there on strictly volunteer basis also. He didn't have to be there. So he found out it was, you know, a friend of his kid, and he volunteered and went up. And, you know, some of the courage and discipline of you know, the Thai Navy SEALs was quite impressive. You know, a lot of them aren't necessarily cave trained, you know, at this capacity, but they were going in to make sure that they could do it anyway. And yeah, I mean, it was a really rough day for us. I mean, we didn't get the specifics of what happened, but, you know, it didn't really matter at that point. You know, we sort of lost one of our tribe, and yeah, I mean, it definitely changed sort of the procedures of how things were going to go, and, you know, the vibe. I was actually quite impressed with, you know, how the Thai culture dealt with that also. I mean, I think everyone dealt in a little bit way, but they almost used it as you know, a push to sort of keep going, and that, you know, they weren't going to let his sort of death be in vain. It sort of almost, in a weird way, revitalized sort of some of the ambitions and some of the procedures that were going there. But I mean, that's the last thing you want to happen in any type of rescue, is to create another one. And, you know, it was yeah, it was a tough one. I didn't realize how big, you know, of a story it was. Obviously, it's massive when you're there because there's press going on and everything else, but you didn't realize how captivated the sort of world took it. You know, I turned on the news a little bit, and you're seeing all these sort of diagrams of how it's going to go, and not one of them was really right, to be fair. But I mean, obviously, cave diving is quite a complex thing if you're not sort of trained in it, especially in this situation. So, you know, sort of watched some of the experts and some of the suggestions that they were going to happen, and sort of sit there and trickle and laugh at the end. Again, as this is all going on, you know, there's still, you know, we're getting the cave set up and ready to go for any type that's going to happen. Again, they're still trying to drill. They're still got, you know, Elon Musk making the submarine. So, but again, that was fairly coming to an end. When they started realizing that the kids were going hypoxic, we had about 3 more days of a weather window, and, you know, keeping the kids in there for 4 months now was not an option. I was going through these slides this morning, and I had to put this one in. I figure out a big trade show, and we all like shiny new gear. Do you know who doesn't like shiny new gear? Rick and John. It was quite impressive watching them gear up and go in. As they were sort of prepping, you know, it was fairly evident that, you know, we needed a little bit more help. So, you know, Rick and John, you know, called back to the UK cave team, and then we actually, then four new members started flying in. Chris Jewell and Jason on top. Right, we got Connor and Roll on the bottom. And not pictured there is my friend Jim Warney. So now there was 7 members of the UK team over. We still didn't know exactly what the full plan was. It was becoming a little bit more evident when the 2 next key pieces flew in. Dr. Richard Harris and Craig Cohen. All right, Dr. Harris has a very unique skill set. Not only is he a massively accomplished cave diver, but he's also an anesthesiologist. So when you're starting to put together some of the ideas of how we're going to do and push around, putting the kids under some type of sedation was the best idea that they had at the time. The biggest thing for kids in this situation was going to be panic. You know, not only for the kids, but for the rescue divers also. So when you think of, you know, there's never been a rescue like this before, but you think of other sort of cave rescue situations that you've been involved with, and that's maybe, you know, where a cave diver goes in, gets lost, finds an air pocket. But, you know, fixing that situation is a little bit easier because all you have to do is swim in another tank and swim out. He has the skills to do it. But these are 13 kids who don't know how to swim. So trying to figure out how we're going to manage the stress and the fear, obviously this is where the idea of actually sedating the kids come in. I know took a little bit for it to kind of come out in the media as to sort of what level of sedation was happening. They're out. Out. You know, that was the safest way that they had for the kids and also for the divers swimming. All right, so I remember when they sort of told us the story. You're kind of sitting around and they're saying they're going to sedate a bunch of kids and hog tie and pull them out, and you're kind of like, you're going to what? I mean, you can just see the sort of the Thai language barriers. This is pretty much what they had to deal with in the cave. But drug them out, take them out. You know, I was watching the conversation go back and forth and how everything worked. It was really impressive to see the level of problem solving that these guys went through, and you know how they sort of multitask and went through. Obviously, with the sedation, obviously keeping an open circuit regulator was going to be more of an issue. So the idea was to now use full face masks. With the sedation, they were obviously where this is where obviously the procedure of Dr. Harris comes in. It was making sure that you could sedate them enough where they'd be out, but not too much where they affects the respiratory system. So that's where, again, I'm not a doctor, I think it was 3/4 ketamine and 1/4 Valium. And ketamine is actually one drug that will actually sedate you, but it doesn't affect the respiratory system. So it's trying to find, for Dr. Harris, trying to find that fine balance of obviously having them sedated, but not too sedated that they can't breathe. Yeah, so I mean, obviously, that's a truly remarkable story in itself right there. With the full face mask, again, because the kids had such a low respiratory rate based on the ketamine sedation, we actually had to tweak the full face mask to be positive pressure. So realistically, they were pretty much free flowing the whole time. It's pretty much how it went. The biggest worry that we had was obviously going to be the size of the kids. These were masks that were designed for, you know, a normal diver. So getting it on a 12-year-old Thai boy's face was something that we weren't really sure how it was going to do as far as creating a seal. At that point in time, when we were sort of, this is the ideas that we're going to try to push forward, we grabbed some local kids, took them to a pool, and we actually tried it out on them. So we took the configuration, we took the mask. I think there was actually requests to see if they could actually sedate a kid. That didn't go over very well. But yeah, so we took a bunch of kids in the pool. We just tried the harnesses on. We tried the masks on, making sure that it would sort of fit with sort of the light-sized body type. And to be honest, it actually worked fairly well. I had my doubts at first, for sure, but actually getting in the water with the kids and trying it out, you know, it definitely had some potential. There's lots of diagrams of how the configuration was going to go, and like I say, this is actually the closest one to, you know, the reality of how it kind of happened. All right, so the kids were on a full face mask that you saw the harness they had on, and then the actual tanks was actually bungee to their stomach. Right, and this let the UK divers, the primary rescue team, sort of position themselves above them or beside them or behind them, depending on the small restrictions they had to fit through. And you can imagine the complexity of this part, because I mean the danger for obviously the kids and UK divers, if they hit their head on one thing and that mask comes off, there's no going back from that. And the visibility, the current stuff they were dealing with, for the 4 main UK guys taking those kids out, I can't even imagine the sort of stress that they were going through in that. So that's, again, us sort of practicing the pool and sort of getting a rough idea of how the kids are going to be sort of taken out. A few of the media outlets said the kids oxygen, the kids this. And I know for divers, it's like nails on a chalkboard when they use oxygen instead of air or something. It drives everyone crazy. I'm not sure they knew it, but they actually got it right. The kids were actually on pure O2. The deepest part we had in the cave was about 7 meters. So oxygen toxicity was an issue. And if we did have any issues or potential drownings, obviously having them saturated with O2 was the best option. So the kids were on pure O2, and then we were just on normal air. So not knowingly, the media actually got that one right. Yeah, I mean, now this is where we're sort of we tried on the kids, it was working, and so now it kind of came down to they had to pull a trigger. So this is where the mayor said, all right, if it's working, all right, you guys have to go. We have 3 more days before the weather comes. Maybe 2 or 3 more days before the kids start going hypoxic. You guys have tried every option you have. Go with it. So I mean, I think if sedating some kids, tying their harness behind their back and pulling them out, if that's the best option you have, I think it kind of only talks about how bad the other options are. Yeah, so it was go time. I mean, they gave us permission to go in. We were all set up. Like I said, we had spent 4 days prepping the cave, get the tanks in there. We were ready to go, and it was literally, all right, tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. You're going in. How the operation was planned to work, and based on the medical history of the kids, was that we have the 4 primary rescue divers, the 2 doctors. They would swim all the way into back where the kids are, get the kids prepped out, and then 1 diver would take 1 child from beginning to end. All right? Inside those sections, you can see there's some 6, 7, 8. This is where us as the support team would be sort of set up, ready to help them in anything that we had to do. All right? So obviously with our job, for a lot of it was going to be changing the kids' tanks, which turned into, that's a 2 or 3 man job. The kids are obviously completely limp, so the way the masks work, the mask had to fully come off because we changed the air. Kids couldn't breathe, so we had to have 1 person holding the kid, 1 person taking the mask off, 1 person changing the tanks, or again, just trying to help the UK guys get their stuff sorted out. Couple of the situations, again, the way the sedation works for the kids, it only lasts about 45 minutes. Trying to find a happy balance of not too much or too little. So we actually had been given some little top-up needles. I had this little rubber band with some ketamine needles on the side, and then depending on sort of the advice of the primary UK divers, when they had their last injection, when it was, we'd have to top them up, making sure that when you leave, say, chamber 6 where I was, they had a 45-minute swim. So they didn't want the kids becoming conscious on that swim. So if they hadn't had an injection in an hour, then they'd tell me. And so Dr. Harris said I get my underwater cave anesthesiology cert at some point. So yeah, sitting there trying to practice on water bottles before. So, I mean, that was the general idea, is that, based on, how much air the kids had, how much, medical history there, that 1 person could monitor from beginning to end, and they had 6 of us stationed out at different areas to help with whatever we have. So this is what the sort of inside sump 3 looks like. You can see all the tanks in the back. This is where the chamber is. I mean, the hardest part with this was the lack of communication. We had 0 communication. So when something's never been done before and it's so extreme this level, you can try and plan to have things done in half an hour, 45 minutes, or whatever it is, but it just didn't happen that way. So not only did we not know when the first kids were coming based on how long it was taking the guys to swim back, based on how long it was prepping them, but later on, as the sort of days went through, when you send the kids off, you also don't know for another 4 hours if they made it or not. There's 0 communication aside. So, I mean, that was stressful. I mean, so the very first day, we're going to go in, and we were actually a little bit late. 2 guys in front of us were on CCRs. They had some small problems, and so we were actually maybe 20 minutes late getting in the water. And so we were a little bit stressed. You know, we didn't want the kids to get to chamber 6 or 5, wherever we were, and have no one there. So the guy that I was with was like, hey, let's pick up the pace a little bit. We're going to go a little bit faster. So I was like, all right, you lead. And the good thing about this sort of cave, again, obviously, is there's one way in, one way out. There's no complex navigation. We didn't put down cookies or arrows. It was literally just pulling yourself hand over hand. And with the exception of one part inside Chump 4 where they actually, when they put the line in, they actually done a big circle. So when they tied off to that, it's a big steel buckle. You couldn't miss it. But just to sort of show you the visibility and the conditions of the cave, I was in second. And again, so we were kind of go a little bit faster. We're pulling ourselves through. I get to the very end where I'm expecting my friend to be there, and he's not there. So the person that's in front of me has gone missing. I know he hasn't continued on because he wouldn't have done that anyway, but there's also a set of tanks in there that we were supposed to move, and those tanks are still there. So I'm sitting there in sort of the dark in Sump 4 by myself, trying to go through the sort of possible things of, where my buddy went at that point in time. I was like, he came off the line, well, I can't find him anyway. So the only thing that I could really think of is that he'd actually gone pretty fast and actually missed this one little T-section and gone right by it. In which case, he would have gone and swum around, he would end up back at the start. So I sat there and I'm trying to go through, what would I normally do in this situation, or what can I do? This is a half an hour swim in, so now I have to think of, am I gonna swim back and try and find him, where he's either gone all the way around and found his way back, or he's somewhere in the cave and I'm not gonna be able to find him anyway. But now if I swim half an hour back and then half an hour back out again, now I'm not 20 minutes late, now I'm an hour and a half late, and now we're gonna have a bunch of kids show up and no support in these sections, which would have been disastrous. So I had to make a call just to have confidence in my buddy, and I just kept going. It's not, the first rescue, you're sitting in the dark and all you're doing is looking for sort of lights come from the water for the cave guys. But now I'm sitting there by myself, not knowing when the kids are going to come, but now I'm also looking the other way and wondering if my buddy's going to show up, which he did. We had a few choice words. I mean, the conditions are, what actually happened in that situation was in the first meter of the cave, we were still in the cave mouth, and he had a problem with his cave helmet. So he actually let go of the line for 2 seconds to fix his cave helmet, and in the cave mouth, in the first meter, I'd actually passed him. That's how little you could see. So the whole time I was behind him, I thought I was behind him, I was actually in front of him. So he got to that section, I'd already waited for 10 minutes and gone. He got there, thought I was behind, he'd turn around, so they thought I was lost in the cave. So, yeah, we had a few choice words for each other when we sat in there in chamber 6, I'll tell you that. But that was obviously very tough, because you're sitting there and you're expecting the kids to come on a 45-minute interval. The first one didn't come for 3.5 hours. Also there's quite a bit of complexity. I'm gonna make 3 hours anyway, but trying to get the kids in the wetsuits and trying to get them prepped up just took a little bit longer. And you're sitting there and trying to think if someone's gone drastically wrong, they've had to abort. But I'll never forget that sort of, when Jason came by with the first kid. You're sitting there on the side of this mud pit, and the idea is when the UK diver surfaced, we'd sort of swim out, pull the kids, see if they need help, change tanks, give the the UK guys a little bit of a rest. But I've never seen Jason sort of walk so slow. It's one of the most sort of calculated, methodical. So you're kind of looking at it going, other things are perfect and it doesn't matter, or the kid's not making it, there's no point in rushing. But I've just never seen something so calculated. And I sat there and I told him that the other day, but they get closer and closer, and then you start seeing bubbles come up from the mask because the kids are face down, and you're like, holy smokes, this is actually gonna work. The first day was obviously, we were changing in a lot more tanks than we did on day 2 or day 3. Obviously it was a little bit more apprehensive and making sure we were on it as we got used to the procedure and how long it was going to take. What took us about 10 hours on day 1, we'd get down to about 6 on day 3, just being a little bit more efficient, not having to change many tanks, and go through there. So, I mean, the hard part again was the lack of communication and the waiting, but it's also not trying to get, I'm not sure cocky is the word, but I mean, just because we went 4 for 4 on on day one doesn't mean that the risks are any less on day two. And they were very clear when we sort of came back on day one that, all right, just because obviously I think the procedures was going to work, but all it took was one sort of wrong turn or one thing, bump of heads, and now, so that was kind of, also the first day was quite electric, and then again it's sort of the same thing. You're like, okay, fine, we got to do this 2 more times. So the general idea. So this is the actual rope that the kids came out on. So when we got them out, obviously we carried them to chamber 3. They did a quick medical assessment, and again, because of the complexities in actually carrying them in and carrying them out, they actually used the same bungee system, pulley system that they did for the tanks. So they put the kids in the sked goes here, bundle them up, and actually pull them through the cave system down that little part down here. All right. So just so you guys get a little bit of a visual.
We're going to take you back to that dramatic rescue in Thailand.
Is it working?
And we just received new pictures of the rescue itself inside the cave system. And these are the boys actually being brought out along the cave system in that 3-day operation to rescue the 12 boys and their football coach had been trapped in that cave. We're going to take you back to that dramatic rescue in Thailand. And we just received new pictures.
Yeah, I think the voice is really messed up there. It was just a few visuals to get a rough idea. I think everyone's seen the sort of footage from inside. Yeah, I do remember sort of that one time on sort of. I had the unique situation of after day one they wanted to keep everything the exact same. So the person that I was with on day one actually got sick. So at this point in time, they hauled one of the other UK guys up. So he was chambered with me in chamber 6, and then Jim. When it actually went from 4 the first day, 4 the second day, to 5 on the last day. All right, Jim was the one who got called up to take the 5th boy out. So then I had the joy and pleasure of being by myself inside some 6. But I do remember sort of coming back on that last day, and when you pop inside some 3, I think everyone sort of knew, like the US Marine guys there, they sort of just sit there on the cave edge, and you sort of pop up, and they wouldn't talk to you for sort of a minute. You sort of take your helmet off, take your regulator out, sort of give it a little bit of stretch, and then you're kind of like, all right, give me the news. And they're always like 3 for 3, 4 for 4, whatever it is. Yeah, on that last day, I just remember sort of surfing to come up, and they just sat there with this big smile on their face. The kids are obviously gone, because again, once the kids leave you don't know for 4 or 5 hours, if they made it or not. So the first thing you always did when you pop back to some 3 was sort of, put your head up and then, get a rundown on how it went. So this is actually on the last day. This is the whole team that was involved there. That was quite a feeling, I will say. So we hadn't seen the kids. They were already long gone by the time we got there. A lot of the guys already cleaned their gear up, and we're sort of waiting for us to come back out. But it was oddly silent in there too. Everyone sort of just sat there and obviously shook a few hands and gave a few hugs, but I think it took a while to sort of sink in that it was actually sort of over, that it actually worked, and it was fully successful. At that point in time, chamber 3 was like, fully operational. They had thrown us in Kentucky Fried Chicken at the end. so they had Kentucky Fried Chicken, and the U.S. commander. I think on day 1, he's like, if you just pull us off, we'll get you a little bottle. So I think you had a little bottle of Jack Daniels there that everyone sort of passed around. I had a little smother. When the kids came out, I mean, that definitely wasn't the end of this story. And everyone has to realize there was still. Let's get that off the screen. Everyone had to realize that we still had the 4 Thai Navy SEALs who spent like the 2 weeks with the kids. With the events that happened earlier, losing one of the Thai Navy SEALs, the support team, us, said that we would stay behind and just assist in case anything needed any. So the 3 or 4 of us stayed behind. And this is, again, you start looking at the timing of how these things went and how the pumps were working. We were estimating that they were probably going to be about 2.5 hours, 3 hours. That's what they were told. Like, as soon as the last child leaves, wait 3 hours, then start making your way out so we don't have any bottlenecks in case we're a little bit slower with some of the kids. So we're sitting inside some 3. It's just the 4 of us divers and then the U.S. military at this point. And we're trying to check the time, see when they're supposed to come out. And there's 3 or 4 massive pumps that have been pumping water out for the last 2 weeks. And as we're sitting there, all we hear is this big crack. One of the couplings breaks, and now there's one of the pumps just spewing water all over the side of the cave floor. So they try and fix it, but it's completely broken. And that happened just as the first Navy SEAL popped out. So he popped out, and we're like, okay, fine. We're looking at the water levels, is it going up? And it wasn't going up too bad. And obviously we're talking to the first Navy SEAL that came out. He's like, yeah, they're all in order. So he's like, okay, fine, we should be fine for the next half an hour it is for everyone to come out. And just as he's saying that, all right, a second of the 3rd pump makes. All right, so now we have 2 of the 3 pumps that have been working non-stop, have managed to completely break in a matter of 5 minutes, to the point where we could actually watch the water level rise up in that chamber. The ties are very efficient enough that they'd actually managed to take all the tanks out of that chamber already, which wasn't the best for us as we're sitting around with no tanks and watching the water level rise to the point where we're almost getting locked in. So we're sitting there, and just as the other guys come up, so there's a point where from 4 to 3 we're to come this, you're swimming along, and you're literally taking sort of breaths as you're going through, to a point where if we were in there another 5 minutes, we were going to be stuck. So they had sort of warned them. Even some of the UK divers had heard that we might get trapped in there. They had put some gear back on there walking out, but unfortunately the timing worked down there. But we had to make quite a big run for it. Left all my dive gear in there, hoping to get that back sooner or later. But yeah, so I mean, there was once we sort of all got out, then that's when we sort of took a little bit of a deep breath. At this point in time, we're still on a sort of a gag order from the military as far as what we can say to press and what we can't, until they sort of get a general statement. My mom wasn't too impressed, for more reasons than one. But yeah, there's a bunch of news crews waiting for us at the hotel, and they're asking us all the questions. And of course, we couldn't really say anything. We were told we weren't allowed to, and so they asked what we're going to do now. And I made the mistake of saying I was going to have a beer. And of course, that's the one part they put on the news. My mom was like, really? That's the one thing I get to see my kid on the news? And he's talking about it. I was like, oh, man. But, yeah, the next morning, they woke us up at 8 o'clock in the morning. We're pretty banged up at this point. I mean, your hands and feet are all cut up, and, a few of the guys were getting some pretty bad colds, and nothing too serious, but they want to take us to the hospital. Yeah, so it's about an hour away. So I woke us up at 7 o'clock to tell us we were tired to go back to bed. Like, thanks, I was in bed before you woke me up, but they obviously did a very good job of taking care of us, for sure. It was sort of very anticlimactic, because you obviously want to see the kids and see how they're doing, and you've been financially and emotionally invested in this for so many weeks, and they were at the hospital. They're actually right above us. Unfortunately, because of their weakened immune system and everything else, they're afraid that of contamination. So not even their parents were allowed to see them for 2 weeks behind glass. So they were sitting right there, and we asked if we could go see them, but they were like, "No, you're not gonna see them for a while." It wasn't actually until just recently we actually had a finally chance to sit down and meet the kids. So, yeah, I mean, I told this story a couple times now, and sitting down and working with some of the guys who did some amazing jobs is, it really is remarkable. I think, the dive industry did some amazing stuff that weekend. Everyone sort of pulled together. I don't think I've ever had so many messages from my team and my friends for supports, and all the manufacturers, and it was it really goes to show that you can kind of pull it together when we want. It's amazing sort of working under the UK rescue guys. I've been watching those guys work is truly phenomenal, to be fair. A lot of people ask sort of why you went up there, and when we went up, I just went up there to carry tanks, help, whatever it was. Obviously that changed quite fast, but I think anytime you have sort of some type of skill set that you can use to the best of your ability to help out, then you sort of feel obliged to do it anyway. But really in the end, sort of this moment here, that sort of made it all sort of worth it. You know, so this is again only a couple weeks ago. They put a banquet up in Bangkok for us, and this is the first time that we actually got to sit there and you know, say hello to the kids. They don't speak any English, so it's not not having a very big conversation. But you know, for me, this moment was sort of what made it all worthwhile. To be fair, you know, I've seen what the kids are doing now, and you know, some of the opportunities that are present to them, and you know, I think they're going to go on and do some pretty amazing things. They're pretty special kids. The one person that I actually haven't had a chance to meet yet is the coach. During this event, he was actually back in the monastery. He's a monk, so he's next on my list to shake hands with and say hello, because again, some people did some truly remarkable work and that, and he's definitely one of them. Yeah, so I mean, the Thai people are obviously very proud of the operations, what they did, and sort of nicknamed it United as One. And you know, meeting sort of all 9,000 people who were up there. I took part in it, from the people who were cooking and cleaning. And I thought I was actually going to lose weight up there. I think I gained 4 kilos. They fed me so much. But yeah, there was no shortage of hospitality or anything out there, and they continue to do it. So it's quite an amazing process to be part of. Fair. So that's it for me, guys. Any questions for me? Sure. Okay.
Not really a question, but for all of us that dive, for all of us that have overhead training, that are a part of the community, thank you for what you did, to volunteer, to go in, and then to see all these people work together as an efficient machine, as a team, is quite impressive. And thank you so much.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, there's some, you know, everyone played a crucial part, you know, and I was really proud at the end to see all 9,000 people there, again, whether they're cooking and cleaning, whatever it is. It really, you know, I've never seen so many people so determined, sort of, you know, for one common goal. It was, you know, the vibe up there was obviously stressful, and it's, you know, it's obviously, we had obviously massive, you know, upsetting days and this, but it was just an electric, you know, situation to be there. And yeah, it's you know, the Thai hospitality and the mentality is phenomenal.
What kind of temperatures?
Temperatures, I mean, yeah, sorry, I forgot to touch on that. I mean, 20. So, I mean, when we were getting the kids ready, I mean, for us and a little bit of package, I was quite all right, but the kids, they were worried that the kids were going to have hypothermia. So, I mean, when we're going through all the air chains of what's going to happen or what it is, they were actually very scared for the kids' core temperature in getting them out. The first run, when we got them back, they did a core temperature, and it wasn't as bad as they thought, but it was definitely, you know, trying to find wetsuits for them at that size and everything else. And like I say, your kid, you know, we had them in the water for about 4 hours. You know, we were always in and out of the water, and, you know, could dry off a little bit, but once the kids started, you know, they were almost fully submerged, face down for 4 hours. So hypothermia was definitely an onset there for sure.
How long were you in each chamber? You said how long were you in the chamber? 12-hour day?
Yeah, I mean, the 3 or 4 days that we were setting up, I mean, we kind of get our stuff done and leave. Oh, he asked how long I was in the chambers for. I mean, those are sometimes up to 10, 12-hour days. I mean, especially the first day of the operation on day one of actually getting the kids out, because it took a little bit longer for them to prep them and bring them out. That was our longest day. And like I say, it was supposed to be, so we waited for 2-3 hours, and we had to do, you know, 45 minutes, and then between the third and fourth kid, we had another 2-hour break, which was stressful because you're sort of getting this little bit of rhythm, but then also at the same time you're, you know, wondering with lack of communication with things. But so, yeah, an hour walk in, and then the swims are about 45 minutes each, all right? And then we'd have to, for the things, we'd sit there for about 6 or 8 hours. The last day I was on my own in the cave for 8 hours. It was not fun. Yes.
How about the currents while you were diving?
Currents? I mean, again, that's, I lucked out a little bit. By the time I got involved, they'd calmed down quite a bit. Like, say, Mother Nature really helps out towards the end. Obviously caused the situation, and it was kind of hard at first. But I was lucky enough not to deal with massive levels of flow. I mean, put it this way, it would be a 4-hour swim in and a 2-hour swim out. So it definitely was, but nothing like they did on the initial searches where it was literally up against the river. I've tried getting the footage, but they wouldn't give it to me. But yeah, it's truly, they were dealing with some hectic stuff. I was lucky enough to have it toned down a little bit by the time we got there. Anyone else? No? No.
That's actually not a question, but if you can confirm from Ada here, the full face masks were donated by the company in the US in San Diego?
Sorry?
The full face mask for the boys
were
donated by a US company in San Diego?
I'm not sure about that. I have some good relationship with friends at Ocean Reef, and I sent them a message, and they sent over 10 from Italy. Those ones couldn't be tweaked there, so the other ones, I'm not sure where the other ones came from, to be fair. We had 4 or 5 OTS, we had 10 Ocean Reefs. Yeah, as far as their origin, as far as the OTS ones, I'm not sure. I know Ocean Reef was amazing. They sent over 10 masks instantly from Italy, and then those we used for the coach, because he has a little bit bigger head size there.
Erik?
Yes. They came from England. Yeah. All right. So they came from England. I think they might have actually. Did they come with the UK team? Yeah. I think there was 1 or 2 on site, and then I think when Jason and the second group flew in, I think they brought some with them.
Neil Brock spent a long time trying to get these masks prepped and ready, and then worked on trying to come up with field solutions in the UK, which he went and Facebook communicated through to Chris Jewell, so that Chris Jewell got it so that they could fit it, because they were trying to fit a big adult mask on a little tight face.
Yeah, I mean that's sort of the big thing we had. We weren't sure how they were going to fit. I mean, these weren't designed for 12-year-old boys, 12-year-old Thai boys. So that's. I think we were all a little bit hesitant until we actually got them in the pool and tried and get them. At that point in time, I don't think they had them set to positive pressure yet. I know they had a few engineers up there, and they're doing a few late nights trying to get them, fully working that way. I wanted to shave the kid's head so it wasn't their hairline. They wouldn't let me do that, but. Anything else, guys? All good? Yes, very much.